What up, Wizards? It's Dev and Igby. You can kind of see him down here a little bit. It is day number 2 of Duskmourn preview season, and I gotta say, Wizards kind of playing this one close to the chest, and I think I like it. You see, normally on day 2 of preview season, we get like 96 cards. Wizard just throws them at us. Here, you read these. There's going to be a test. Hope you remember all of it. These mechanics aren't complicated at all, but actually today, they just threw us like 19 cards. It's really closer to 10 cards. You'll see why as we get into the video. And I like that, man. I like when spoiler season's a little bit longer. We have more time to discuss things, talk stuff over, and actually take our time looking at the cards in the first place. So to that end, let's look at these cards. That's what you're here for. Now, let's start this little house party off the same way we did yesterday with a 5-mana Fear at a lower rarity. This time it's Fear of Failed Tests, 4 and a blue for a 2/7 enchantment creature, which is also a nightmare. I get the feeling they all will be. But when it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw that many cards. So if it gets through for its base PT, you're drawing 2, something. If it's, 3, 4, 5 power, you draw that many cards. That's actually pretty good if it gets through, but it's probably not going to get through too often. This is 5 mana and has like no real form of evasion whatsoever. And you want me to do more work beyond that to draw more cards? Get out of here, man. This card should be afraid of itself because it kind of failed a pretty key test here. Now, sticking with the blue draft uncommons here, we also saw Unwilling Vessel today. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 human wizard with vigilance. It also has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a possession counter on Unwilling Vessel. When Vessel dies, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of counters on Vessel. Now, I know this looks lame, right? But if you're willing to look at it for a second, I think there's a couple of things that should be pointed out about it. Remember Twitching Doll? We've looked at it a couple of times so far in previous season. Basically, it gets nest counters, but when it dies, it gives you insects equal to the number of counters on it. So that card doesn't care if you're counting nest counters or +1/+1 counters, ability counters, -1/-1 counters. It doesn't really matter, right? Same thing with this thing. So I'm hoping that we're seeing an ongoing theme here of cards that get a specific kind of counter, but when they die, they do a thing equal to the amount of counters, not that specific kind of counter. So just like Twitching Doll, you can put +1/+1 counters or any other kind of counter on this, and when it dies, you get a relatively huge guy if you're able to do enough work. But yeah, just like the last thing, you're telling me I got to do work to make my 3-mana 3/2 good? I don't really want to do any work, but at least it's got a keyword ability, and I would normally not really like 3-mana 3/2s for limited. The big reason behind that is because they trade with a lot of 2-drops, and you don't want your 3-drops to trade with 2s. But in this case, again, if you're able to put a couple of counters on it, then suddenly, yeah, it trades with 2s, but it also leaves behind a flying creature, which is pretty sweet. Also, kind of sucks the guy has to die to not be possessed anymore. You go to the doctor priest, and the doctor priest is like, hey, you're possessed. And you're like, hey, can we fix that? And they're like, yes. But I got some bad news. So let's move on, though, to Glimmer Seeker. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/3 human survivor. Survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Glimmer Seeker is tapped, draw a card if you control a Glimmer creature. If you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. So again, a drafty card here mostly, but this will start drawing cards for you, like eventually, so long as it keeps getting through safely, which I kind of like. But, the first time it gets through safely, it gets you a 1/1, so a little bit of tokens, take some tokens, baby. But then it has to get through again, or maybe find a way to tap it down during your first main. Second main phase starts, you get to start drawing cards. So I actually think this is a pretty sweet little uncommon you want to be on the lookout for if you're building like precisely the right deck in limited. But I think you probably will be building a deck that wants this guy like a good bit of the time. He's a 3-mana 3/3 at the floor, which is kind of all right. The ceiling's pretty high on him. Also like that the flavor text is supposed to denote that she thinks that these things are just so cute and they're awesome, and like maybe they're a little bit cute compared to the rest of the stuff in Duskmourn, but still, if I saw these things in one of the rooms, I wouldn't be like, oh, a glimmer of shining hope, how adorable. I'd be like, that is a freaky light worm over there. I'm going to go to the next room now. Just nothing in Duskmourn looks safe or secure to me. Not even the teddy bears. For example, Patched Plaything here looks pretty freaking freaky. This is a 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 4/3 artifact creature, which is also a toy. It has double strike, and it enters with 2 -1/-1 counters on it if you cast it from your hand there, kids. So what you're supposed to do with this thematically, like in the set, is to manifest dread. That thing that lets you look at a couple of cards from the top of your library, and then you put one of them down as a 2/2 face down on the table, turn it up for its casting cost, all that. So if you manifest dread, And this is the card you put on the table. You can turn it up for 3 mana, and you have a 4/3 double strike. And you turn it up at any time, which is also pretty great. But of course, like, reanimation works too. We've got a couple of like actually kind of good looking, like Lively Dirge, for instance, like reanimation spells for specifically this in standard right at the moment. That line was supposed to be at the moment, and then I kind of switched it in my head at the very end to like right at this moment, and it didn't come out right, so I apologize for the bad English. But still, I think this card is actually kind of very sweet. I also like that, like, if you blink it, for instance, it'll come back in with like no counters on it, which is nice. So there's a bunch of ways to like engineer getting the counters off of this thing or never putting them on in the first place. For the most part, I don't think this is really a standard card at all. It's just like a neat little limited piece, but it's a pretty good one, man. If it goes through uncontested, it can deal as much as 8 damage. Not to mention you can like throw auras and give it anthems and stuff like that. So who knows how much this damage this thing's actually kidding in for. The only one that's going to be stuffed is your opponent with pain. Sorry, that was really bad. That was unbearable. It was unbearable! Bear. So let's move on. We got to cleanse our palate after that. That joke was Winnie the Pooh, you know what I'm saying? But this card here is Infernal Phantom. It's on your screen right now. Let's concentrate on it. Instead of my puns, why do you come here? This is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 2/3 spirit with Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, Infernal Phantom gets +2/+0 until end of turn. When Phantom dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. This guy's too much mana. I want to get that out of the way and then say it like 5 more times before this entry's over, but I just have to get that out of the way because I actually have a fair amount of praise for the card, and I don't want you to think that I actually think this card's good. 4 mana is probably too much, but at the same time, here comes Dev. The Dev you know and love that's going to be like, this bad card's actually good, even though it's not. But still, this 4 mana card right here is pretty sweet with, say, Monstrous Rage, Royal Treatment, these cards that give you some sort of bonus, but also happen to put an enchantment on the table. Also sweet with Audacity. You know, this gets +4/+0 the turn Audacity comes into play. Let's kind of go. So there's a bunch of ways to just throw auras on this. And then suddenly, if your opponent kills it, or if you sacrifice it, or if you Callous Sellsword it, or something like that, you're just dealing all of the damage in the world, and it doesn't actually cost you that much mana to play the spells that boost him. It costs you so much mana to play him, which is like the problem. You know, like, I could sit here all day and be like, well, this enchantment is cheap and it's good with him in standard, but like, we already have a deck in standard that basically does the thing I just said, make a huge dude using cheap spells and then Callous Sellsword it. We have a deck that does that with nothing but like 1 and 2 mana cards. So I really don't think we need this 4 mana card, but it's the thought that counts. The card looks pretty good. Well, we're rounding the corner on the lower rarity stuff, but that also means we're looking at some of the best lower rarity stuff of the day now in Fear of Isolation. This is actually a pretty decent fear here, you know. I haven't seen like too many of those so far. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/3 enchantment creature, nightmare, with flying. As an additional cost to cast this spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So you know what that reminds me of? Nurturing Pixie. That reminds me of Nurturing Pixie a good bit. Now, Pixie is like probably better than this most of the time. I guess this gets an extra point of toughness, but you're paying twice as much for it. But as redundancy, as, you know, copies 5 through 8 of Nurturing Pixie in exactly the right deck, I could certainly see this working out. Now, usually these Pixie decks are white and black, right? They're Warzov, but maybe we could see some blue-black kind of Pixie decks or some Esper Pixie decks now that we also have this in standard to help you pick up your Hopeless Nightmares and all your other stuff that you want to get off the table and play again for them sweet ETBs and such. So, I don't know, man. I actually think we've already seen a card like this do a little bit of work in standard, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this do the same. I will throw a tiny amount of shade at this card before we move on, though. I don't see how this picture gets across the idea of Fear of Isolation. Maybe I'm just not looking at it enough or right. I'm sure that it's right there in front of me, but I will say too, just some praise for the card now. Again, the flavor text makes up for me not getting the art, because flavor text goes so hard. A lot of the flavor text in this set goes hard. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of cards, but for now, yeah, I not only really like this flavor text, I just kind of generally like this card. I guess one more thing actually before we move on, because it just occurred to me. I guess what this is kind of supposed to do, and limited at the very least, is just return other enchantments and enchantment creatures to your hand. so that you can cast them again and get the eerie boost again for whatever things you have that have eerie. And if you have 2 copies of this, you can just keep bouncing themselves, right? One will bounce the other, which will bounce the other, which will bounce the other. And suddenly you're just getting eerie triggers like it's nobody's business. So like maybe this is pretty good in that environment for that one specific application. There it is. We broke the crab, everybody. We broke that weird looking crab that's in the set. Let's go. But not really. Let's move on, though, to the final uncommon of the day. It is. It is technically the final uncommon of the day, yes. This is Smoky Lounge and Misty Salon here. Now, Smoky Lounge is going to cost you 3 mana to cast. 2 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your first main phase, add 2 red mana. Don't get too excited, though, Tex. Spend this mana only to cast room spells and unlock doors. But you've also got Misty Salon here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an enchantment. When you unlock this door, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of unlocked doors among rooms that you control. So just so you know, rooms do unlock when you cast the enchantment. So if you cast the blue 4 mana half of this, and it's the only unlocked thing on the table, because it is unlocked. You cast it, it hit the table, it is unlocked. So that means you'll get a 1/1. Little 1/1 guy. I guess if you cast, Smoky Lounge on turn 3 into unlocking Misty Salon on the next turn, well, you should have a couple of mana left, and you'll have a 2/2 flyer because you have 2 unlocked rooms on the table, see? But 1 fully unlocked room. It's very confusing some of the time how the room mechanic actually works. But again, if you go Smoky Lounge, unlock that because you cast it, right? And then the next turn, unlock Misty Salon, you actually get a decent creature. Altogether, I think this is just supposed to represent like a blue-red unlocking rooms. That works. Unlocking rooms. You are. Blue-red. You are. I see what you did there, Wizards. I think you did it on purpose. But yeah, the unlocking rooms, like archetype in draft, looks to be blue-red, perhaps. But I imagine a lot of cards are going to care about, especially a lot of rooms are going to care about how many other rooms you have unlocked and yada yada. So it might not be specifically just blue and red. And honestly, it looks fairly easy to build like a 3 or even 4 color deck in draft, thanks to a cycle of common dual lands that we get in this set. We'll get to those in just a second, but just kind of finishing up on this card, it does look like if you're going to build like a rooms deck in standard, you probably want to play this because it gives you a bunch of mana to help you unlock rooms, and a lot of them cost a fair amount of mana to unlock. We'll look at one that costs like 7 mana to unlock in a couple of cards here. So again, if you're trying to build rooms in standard, you probably play this just for the ramp, but I'm just from the very small, limited amount of rooms that we've seen so far, I don't know if a rooms deck is exactly where you want to be in standard, but maybe they'll shut my mouth at some point. Now it's time to look at those duels, everybody. I promised you common duels, and I better deliver because I know how Magic players are, man. You get mad. You get promised good duels and you don't see them. One thing I want to say about these before I show them to you is that they are perhaps, I don't want to say for sure because I'm probably missing something here, but they may just be the best common duels ever printed, ever conceived by Wizards of the Coast. So now that I've built them up enough, let's take a look at what some people are calling the shadow duels. Why will we call them that? So let's talk about what they actually do first. Like Abandoned Campground, Murky Sewer, Razor Trap Gorge here. These are all just lands that ETB tapped unless a player has 13 or less life, and then they'll tap for 2 different colors of mana. So I saw somebody on the reddit.com call these shadow duels because this 13 life clause reminds them of Death's Shadow, and I really like the name Shadow Duels for these. If you call them that, it's possible that nobody else in the vicinity knows what you're talking about, so I think we have to let that name sink in a bit. I'm not sure what we call these. I've seen people call them the 13 duels, Triskaideka duels, and all that kind of stuff, so we'll see. We're throwing a bunch of noodles at the wall. We'll see which name sticks at this point, but these just are very good. We got all 10 of these that you can possibly have, and while they're on screen here, if you want to do yourself a favor, read these flavor texts because they all start with "they say," and they're all like little short stories or urban legends or whatever that exist on Duskmourn, and they all go so freaking hard, brother or sister. They went all the way out for some of these. Like this red black one has particularly kind of disturbing flavor text, but I also like the Simic one has really good flavor text. They all do, man. So All I'm saying is check that out. This actually, it's not required reading, but I think that it's really good leisure reading when you have a chance to do so. But yeah, all of these are pretty sweet. You know, it's pretty easy to get your life total, if nothing else, around 13. And if you're in an aggro deck, then it's pretty easy to get your opponent's life total down to 13. But then again, I'm not sure how good these are going to be in an aggro deck, because the first like 2 or 3 turns of the game, they're just really bad. But you know, starting on like turn 3 or 4, then like maybe you get untapped duels out of them, and that's pretty good. So I don't know where exactly these end up, but where I'm sure they end up, at least format-wise, is Pauper. I don't know what decks they end up going in, whether it's Standard, Historic, Pioneer, Pauper, whatever, but they definitely show up in at least one format, and they might show up in well more than that. These are the rare duel that well, they're common duels, but you get what I'm trying to say. These, it's not very common to see a duel that's just not good in Commander whatsoever, but I'm pretty sure these are just like actually god-awful in Commander most of the time. But, you know, I like a card that's really good in competitive 1v1s, and you could set it up and all that, but maybe it's not for the Commander crowd for once, you know what I'm saying? So, and I don't even like mind Commander cards being printed into Standard sets, nowhere near as much as a lot of people online seem to, but it's also nice to sometimes get cards that like are specifically not for Commander at all. So I guess that kind of puts my mind at ease with these two. I just altogether really like these. I think they've got a future ahead of them, and they're going to show up in multiple formats. Countdown to the professor's video where he's like, did these 10-cent lands just ruin a format? And he's talking about Pauper. I'm calling it right now. But anyway, we got to look at some rares from today. We do, guys. That's just kind of how it is. We only have a couple as I record this, but we are still waiting on one more person. And according to the preview schedule, we're waiting on Play Mtg to just upload their preview cards to Twitter for the day. So Play Mtg, if you're somehow watching this before I upload it, maybe you have powers. Put your card on Twitter, man. We're all waiting. But anyway, we've only got a couple of cards so far as I record this before we finish things off. So let's look at our first rare of the day, a Rakdos gold card that actually looks really slick, guys. This is Undead Sprinter right here. 2 mana, a black and a red, for a 2/2 zombie with both trample and haste. You may cast Sprinter from your graveyard if a non-zombie creature died this turn. If you do, Undead Sprinter enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. If you want to know all about the duality of the Magic player here, the 2 wolves we all have inside of us, the first comment on Mythic Spoiler under this card says, oh, this is fun. Plenty of Rakdos aggro decks are smiling. All right. And the comment directly under that says, yet another unplayable zombie. My heart. So we have a card here the Magic community is divided on, or at least these 2 guys are, right? I think the card's pretty good, right? I mean, a 2 mana, 2/2 haste is okay. Like, it's not inherently playable or anything, but it's a good start to becoming playable, and they just threw another keyword ability on there, and they gave it the ability to come back. And if you need another it's a 2 mana 3/3 trample haste, like later in the game. It's really, really good. So, you know, maybe one of your creatures died in combat and you bring this back second main phase. You can't really take advantage of the haste. Not a big deal. You still get a creature on the table. Pretty good, right? But there's also, say, sacking a creature to like a Bone Splinters kind of effect, or anything really like that during your first main phase, paying the mana to bring this back, and suddenly you're attacking with at least a 3/3 trample haste that very turn. Pretty sweet if you just, you know, got rid of like a greedy freebooter or something like that. You scryed, you got the treasure token, you got whatever advantage you get out of sacrificing it, and you also get this dude back. So we're seeing a kind of like aristocratian sacrifice base like Rakdos deck popping up on a couple of the cards in this set. I will always support that archetype, but I'm just going to support this card in general. I think there's plenty of ways that you can bring this back, you know, and we're seeing a bunch of cards in Standard right now from, you know, the Skeleton that's basically like a 1 mana 2/1 that comes back whenever a non-skeleton creature dies, seems to synergize with this somewhat well because they'll keep bringing each other back. But there's also like Forsaken Miner in Standard, which comes back whenever you commit a crime. So we've got a lot of creatures in Standard right now that can come back over and over. And note that this guy, unlike a lot of those guys, this guy can block. And you don't see that a lot on creatures that can come back like so easily. So actually a pretty good looking dude to me. You know, he played the offense, he played the defense, he attack, he protect. Is that still a meme in 2024? I don't think so, but still, I think this guy's actually pretty good. One of the better cards of the day easily. Also, before I get off this card, sometimes we have to learn things from flavor, and I guess the flavor here is that if you run fast enough, you can just come back from the graveyard. Is that what's happening? I think that's probably what's happening here. But anyway, let's move on to the final card of the day if we're all ready for it, or at least so far. I'm telling you, play MTG on X, Twitter. Upload your card, man. Like in the next 5 minutes, upload your card so I can put it in this video. But anyway, it's like almost 7 p.m., brother. Anyway, we got to look at the final card of the day, and it is also a room, but this one is pretty snazzy, dude. Of all the rooms we've seen so far, and we haven't seen too many, I really like the white one that we saw. In a white room with black curtains. I think every time I've said white room 3 times in the last day, and I think that every time I say the name, because I don't actually know the name of the card. But that white room looked really, really good, and I'm pretty sure it's still the best one we've seen so far. But if you want to see the one that is a potential trap and is going to get the most people excited, I think this one is the one we want to look at. So let's check it out. Mirror Room and Fractured Realm, all in one card here. Now, Mirror Room is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment, and it is a true nightmare. Just me in a room with like 700 mirrors. Yeah, that's... If there's anybody else in the room, it'll be a nightmare for them, at least, I should say. It's horrifying. But anyway, this one is 3 mana, and when you unlock the door, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it's a reflection, in addition to its other types. So when you cast this, you get a 3 mana clone for one of your own guys. That ain't too bad. But there's also Fractured Realm, which, remember, you can cast this half first if you have the mana to do it, if you rip it off the top of your library. You can cast this half first, but Fractured Realm is 7 mana, 5 and 2 blue for an enchantment. If a triggered ability of a permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Saffron Olive card, everybody. He's going to be stoked. Do you watch his preview videos? You should also be watching his preview videos. He's really good at it, but I bet you do. I bet you do, because these videos get like 20k views, and his videos get like 70k views. So like, come on, you're watching his too, right? It's fine. We're both nice guys. I like the guy. If my beard was longer, we'd be the same guy. Anyway, can't wait to see what he has to say about this. But note, I've seen a lot of people just call this like, oh, it's the Panharmonicon of the set. This is, as I've heard people call it, Panhar Omnicron. It's just, you got to butt screw the word. I got to censor myself. You got to somehow insert the word omni into it, because this is kind of the best like Panharmonicon effect we've ever seen, right? I think Panharmonicon is like a creature entering, it triggers twice or whatever. This is just whenever a thing triggers. Whenever anything triggers on your side of the table, it triggers twice, whether it's an ETB trigger, a death trigger, a you drew a card trigger. It doesn't matter. If it's a trigger, it triggers a lot. I've said the word triggers so many times in this video just because of this like 30-second block of content. But yeah, this is the most possible extra procs that you could imagine off of literally any game action occurring. Now, one thing I feel like I have to do with this card here is disappoint you. In case you didn't know exactly how rooms worked, you have to cast a room to unlock whatever part of that room you're trying to unlock. So if this is in your graveyard and you somehow reanimate it with a reanimation spell that targets enchantments, there's like 2 or 3 of them in standard right now. It doesn't work the way you want it to. You haven't actually unlocked any of the rooms. It gets to sit there on the table, and you get to unlock the rooms by paying their mana cost at sorcery speed, but just reanimating them will not unlock any of the rooms for you. So basically, if you had any cool ideas for this, get them out of your head, Junior. But I will say, calling back to the card we looked at earlier, you know, we've seen a card in this video that's a room, and it gives you 2 red mana every turn to unlock rooms. So that kind of brings the cost of this down to 5. That's good. That's actually not bad, like whatsoever. So if you have 5 lands and that card in play, you can just play this. So it's kind of like you can curve out from Smoky, what is it, Smoky Parlor or something? Smoky Lounge? Smokefield Lounge. That's what it is. Into this a little bit. And I think that's a cool way to do things. And then you can have cards in your deck that say, like, whenever you fully unlock a room or whenever a room is unlocked at all, then the thing happens, and that'll trigger twice. So, like, maybe we're cooking something here, but, like, I highly doubt it, man. 7 mana to unlock this, and no real way of cheating it onto the table or cheating it into unlock mode is going to be a serious problem. But we haven't seen for sure that there's no way of cheating unlocks, right? There might be like an artifact or a spell in the set somewhere that's like skeleton key, and it just lets you unlock doors or something. Like, it could be a thing, so hold tight for that. Oh, and this will also trigger Eerie twice, by the way. If I'm not mistaken, that's a triggered ability, so this will start triggering your Eerie stuff twice. That's good. Again, we're breaking that crab. We are breaking that crab in half and sucking out the delicious meat. We got to dip it in butter first. Anyway, altogether, this is a 3-mana clone. And I kind of like 3-mana clones just in and of themselves. They're not a bad rate for a clone, like whatsoever. You can find a use for that. But in some situations, if the game goes long enough, you can just basically skip a turn to unlock this and then start doing unbelievable stuff. And you don't even have to really skip a turn. Like maybe you pay all of your mana and tap out to unlock this room, but then you have stuff that triggers when you attack or when you go into your combat step or when a creature becomes tapped or blah, 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 right? You know, things can trigger for all kinds of reasons. So even if you tap out to unlock this room, it's entirely possible you get like a billion copy triggers that turn and you're just feeling pretty good about that. So I don't know. It costs an awful lot of mana to get the good half of the card, but I don't know if that's going to stop it in the right deck. That appears to be all the cards for today so far. Play MTG has still not uploaded their card to the twitter.com, so you get on that, man. I guess it's an extra card for tomorrow, right? If tomorrow is also like 10 cards, then, you know, more cards is good. But anyway, like I said, that's it for this one. Let me actually put the microphone down. I'm supposed to be in this basic position like all video, but now I've taken it just kind of leaning back on the couch because it's more comfortable and it's my house, and I don't have to care. It's my channel. I don't have to care. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Let me know how you felt about all the stuff from today. I know we didn't get, a huge batch of new cards or anything, but these are definitely interesting. And also, I felt pretty good today because, like, having fewer cards meant I got to tell, like, more stupid jokes and stuff. So, keep them coming. Keep these, like, 10, 12 card days coming, Wizards. I kind of like them. But yeah, shortish video today, but that takes care of both Kit and Caboodle. It's your turn now. Just let me know how you felt again about all these cards today. Any interactions that I missed, anything I got completely wrong, because that happens sometimes. I'm only human and I'm kind of dumb. So just let me know, like, kind of, if I screwed up. But aside from that, you can check out the rest of the channel. We've got yesterday's preview video already up. Go check that out. Link in the description. I've got a little primer course on Duskmourn cards we already knew existed. Link in the description to that. By the way, Come Back Wrong does not grant haste. For some reason, I looked at that card, which doesn't say haste, and I was like, well, it does give you the guy haste. It doesn't do that, so I don't... Just letting you know before you get into that video. But anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Just do all the YouTube stuff on your way out. Hit the like button. Maybe subscribe to the sandwich and or channel, whichever one. If you want to sub to sandwiches, they're delicious. If you want to sub to the channel, it too tastes pretty good. I got to say, man, I'm clean. But anyway, that's it. If you just want to do any more stuff for me, I guess you can follow on Twitch because we're going to be doing one of these preview videos live on Thursday night at around 8 p.m., maybe 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to follow on Twitch and watch these spoilers live, who knows how much I can screw up during a live version of these, right? You have no idea how many takes this usually requires. But anyway, come join us live on Twitch on Thursday night. And apart from that, check out the Patreon. If you want to help support the content, it's only $1 a month to do it, and it really keeps me in business, and it keeps spoiler season happening. What would spoiler season be without SBMTG? I don't want to find out either, to be honest. I want to keep doing this as long as I can. So help us out over there on the Patreon. $1 a month is all it takes, and I think I'm worth it, and I also think that I'm done. So that's about all I got for you guys today. I'm Doug from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.